My name is Victoria Marshall. I am 35 years old, and I am a logistics officer and captain in the United States Navy. On a rainy Friday afternoon in late April, my husband Greg sent me a short text message. "Don't be late coming home from the base tonight. Mom is cooking something special for the family." So I arranged coverage with the duty officer, left the base an hour and a half early, strapped my 14-month-old daughter Noah into her car seat in the back of my SUV, and drove through the main gate. Our house in the coastal town of Blackwood was just 5 miles away. I truly believed Greg's family was gathering to celebrate something pleasant, like another successful real estate deal for Greg or the upcoming holidays. But when I unlocked the front door, I wasn't greeted by a party atmosphere. I walked into a heavy, suffocating silence. Standing in our spacious living room were about 30 people. Greg's entire family, his close friends, and neighbors from down the street. Not a single person smiled. Nobody said hello. Nobody even looked at little Noah, who was happily babbling in my arms. My husband stood right in the center of the room, holding a white folder. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, stood just behind his shoulder with a stone-cold face. Greg slammed a piece of paper onto the coffee table right in front of my feet. "DNA results," he said loudly, making sure every person present could hear. "This child isn't mine." The words didn't land right away. I actually let out a short, quiet laugh, because it was the most absurd, ridiculous sentence I had ever heard in my life. But nobody in the room laughed with me. Eleanor stepped forward. Her voice shook with a carefully rehearsed righteous anger. "You wore the uniform of an officer, and all this time you shamed our family. Take your things and get out of my house." 30 pairs of eyes stared at me in silent condemnation. Little Noah got scared by the sudden noise and grabbed the lapel of my uniform jacket tightly. At that exact moment, the lock behind me clicked, and the front door swung open. Standing on the threshold was Master Sergeant Sarah Dunn, my chief inventory specialist from the base. She was dressed in civilian jeans, but her posture and gaze immediately gave away her military background. In her hands, she held a thick manila envelope. "Am I early?" Sarah asked calmly, using the kind of voice that could halt a supply convoy in its tracks. She was not early. She was exactly on time, because 2 weeks before that night, I had personally asked her to meet me at my house at 7:30 sharp. Why I asked her to be there is its own story, and I will get to it. It had to do with bank accounts and numbers that suddenly started disappearing in the middle of the night. What matters is the effect a single outside witness has on a room like that. 30 people, in an enclosed space, can convince each other of any lie. But when a neutral outsider steps in, with a cold, observant eye, those 30 people suddenly remember what they actually know, which in this case was nothing. Greg's uncle, who usually nodded along with everything Eleanor said, guiltily lowered his eyes. A pair of cousins suddenly found the pattern on the rug fascinating. I set the bakery box down on the console table, walked over to the coffee table, and picked up the paper Greg had thrown down. Printed at the top was the name of a laboratory I had never heard of in my life. There was a bold percentage, and near the bottom, one small technical detail that, instead of causing panic, brought me a sense of absolute, icy calm. I didn't say what that detail was. I neatly folded the page in half, set it back on the table, and looked my husband straight in the eye. "Noah and I will be at my quarters on base," I said in a steady voice. "You can talk to my lawyer." I picked up my daughter's diaper bag, nodded to Sarah, and walked out to the car. Behind my back, Eleanor was still shouting something about her family house. That was the last time I ever walked out of that door, believing this situation could be resolved through a simple conversation. You need to understand who they chose to start this war with. My father served as a supply sergeant for 22 years. He was the kind of man who could find you a specific replacement axle for a military truck in the middle of a sandstorm in Iraq. When I was 16, someone in his unit falsified inventory records and tried to shift the blame for the missing equipment onto my father. My father refused to make a public scene or fight it out in the open. He took a quiet discharge, moved us back home, and spent the last 12 years of his life working at a local hardware store, listening to the town whispers behind his back. He had a single life lesson that he repeated, sitting on the tailgate of his truck. "People lie, Vicky. Paper doesn't. Paper doesn't blink." He kept receipts, invoices, and shipping slips for absolutely everything, but he never showed them to anyone, believing that defending yourself was beneath his dignity. I loved my father dearly, but I swore an oath to myself. I would never run into that same wall, and I would never let a lazy town ruin my life simply because people were too lazy to check the facts. I ended up building the exact same career he had, but with far more resolve. An ROTC scholarship at 18. Commissioned as an officer at 22. 12 years of moving freight, managing inventory, and providing undeniable proof for the Navy. I met Greg Marshall when I was 27. He was a third-generation realtor, possessing the kind of superficial charm that makes people in a room unconsciously lean toward him. We married when I was 29. At 31, I bought our house in Blackwood. I used my VA loan and put down $35,000 of my personal savings, accumulated over 2 tough overseas deployments. Following the advice of realtors and out of blind marital trust, I put both of our names on the deed. Our daughter Noah came along when I was 33. Our arrangement was straightforward. On weekdays, my daughter and I lived in family housing on the naval base, 10 minutes from the military childcare center. On weekends, we drove to Blackwood and played happy family. I thought the constant commuting was the hardest part of my marriage. But in reality, the hardest part was living with a man who was secretly taking inventory of everything I owned. In the middle of the night, while Noah was fast asleep in our quarters, I opened my laptop and went back to the exact task I had been working on for the past 2 weeks, tracking the numbers. 2 weeks before the ambush in our living room, my banking app had locked me out. I called customer support immediately. A polite representative informed me that the recovery email address for our joint savings account had been changed. It hadn't been changed by me. That very night, I changed the passwords on all my personal accounts, turned on instant SMS alerts for any transactions, and rerouted my military paycheck into a brand new account bearing only my name. That was also when I asked Sergeant Sarah Dunn to come to my house in Blackwood on the 19th. I intended to ask my husband one calm, direct question about our money in the presence of a disciplined witness. Greg simply beat me to the punch by scheduling his little theatrical performance for the exact same time. Now, spreading the printed statements across my kitchen table, I could finally see the full picture. In October, our joint savings account had held just over $55,000. By April, there was exactly $1,400 left. Over 5 months, 12 separate transfers had been made, totaling $53,600. Every single dollar had been sent to the exact same place, Marshall Realty Group operating account. From a legal standpoint, he hadn't committed theft. His name was officially on the account, just like mine. And when I had asked the bank about closing the joint account, the teller simply shrugged. Both signatures required. I could protect my future paychecks, and I did, but I couldn't lock a door we both held keys to. So I sat at that table at midnight, doing supply officer math, and one specific detail jumped out at me. The transfers had started back in November. The fake DNA test didn't materialize until April. Greg wasn't a betrayed husband who had accidentally stumbled upon a terrible truth. He was a man drowning in debt, actively building a fraudulent story so he could climb out of his financial hole on my back. On Monday morning, my battalion commander called me into his office before I had even finished my first cup of coffee. Captain Vance is a straightforward man with a face like a steel safe. Without saying a word, he slid a printout of an email across his desk toward me. It had been sent on Friday night at 11:04 p.m. from an anonymous email address. The subject line read, "Officer Conduct and Integrity of Captain Marshall." Attached was a scanned copy of Greg's supposed DNA test, along with a 3-page letter accusing me of marital infidelity. The writer had used the word honor 4 separate times. In the military, adultery isn't just a sad personal story. Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it can be a punishable offense. A commander cannot simply ignore a formal written accusation when an exhibit is attached to it. "A formal inquiry has been initiated," Captain Vance said. "I realize this looks like a nasty divorce tactic, but procedure is procedure. A temporary administrative flag is being placed on your file." That meant one thing. My promotion packet for major, which was scheduled to go before the promotion board that fall, would sit in a desk drawer while outside investigators questioned my colleagues about my personal life. My husband hadn't just aimed at our house. Before that Friday was even over, someone had been sitting at a keyboard trying to destroy my career. An ordinary divorce splits assets in half. This plan was designed to take everything: my home, my daughter, my rank, my reputation, and my name. I walked out of headquarters, made a call, and headed straight to a meeting. The base commander, Rear Admiral Hayes, had been my direct superior 11 years ago during a deployment in the Persian Gulf. He was a man of absolute integrity who had once forced a contractor to haul away an entire shipment of spoiled food at their own expense in 100-degree heat purely on principle. The admiral listened to me in silence, resting his hands flat on his desk. "Captain Marshall," he said, "I cannot intervene in an active investigation or put my thumb on the scale for you. What I can do is ensure that nobody else puts theirs on it either. The inquiry will run strictly by the book. No shortcuts, no rumors, no career executions before the facts are in. Your job is to bring facts. Paper has always been your strong suit." Right after that, he set up a 30-minute consultation for me with Major Daniel Whitfield, a JAG officer with the steady patience of a surgeon. Whitfield glanced at the scan of Greg's DNA test for about 90 seconds and let out a faint chuckle. "This is an over-the-counter home kit result at best," he said. "No verified identities, no documented chain of custody. No civilian court in this state will accept this as proof of anything. As a military lawyer, I cannot represent you in a civilian divorce proceeding. But here is my advice. Hire a top-tier civilian family lawyer immediately. File a motion requesting a court-ordered genetic test, the legal kind, where everyone presents government ID and a neutral third party seals the samples under observation. Turn this into a fight of official documents, and the facts will win." The formal divorce petition from Greg arrived hand-delivered to the base security gate on Thursday. He was filing for divorce, playing the wounded party in his own script. He demanded exclusive use of the Blackwood house and temporary custody of Noah. His lawyer had typed out the justifications in a neat little list. The mother resides on a restricted military installation. The mother is subject to overnight duty shifts and sudden deployments. The mother's schedule is incompatible with a stable home environment. That was the schedule that had 14-month-old Noah at the military childcare center by 7:30 every morning, fed, dressed, and happy. Along with the petition came a second, informal letter, the one his lawyer likely referred to as a generous offer. If I signed over my complete interest in the house and waived any claims regarding the funds taken from our joint accounts, Greg would agree to keep the paternity matter private, out of the community, out of the church, and away from my chain of command. My civilian lawyer, Grace Kettler, a 52-year-old woman with decades of courtroom experience, read through the offer and folded her arms. "This isn't a divorce proposal," she said. "This is a corporate takeover with your family photos hostage. He manufactured a scandal, and now he is trying to sell you your silence. We are not buying anything. We are going to court." The initial court hearing for temporary custody lasted a mere 40 minutes. That was all the time the judge needed to temporarily strip away my weekdays with my daughter. Greg's lawyer, a slick man named Pryor, painted a picture of domestic bliss for the judge. The father is a self-employed businessman who works directly from the family residence. The loving grandmother lives just 4 blocks away. Meanwhile, the mother, with all due respect to her military service, resides in temporary military quarters, subject to sudden field exercises and deployments without notice. Grace Kettler pushed back aggressively, presenting attendance records from the childcare center, medical logs from the pediatrician, and bank records showing that Noah had spent every weekday of her life with me. But temporary hearings often rely on quick shortcuts, and the shortcut in that courtroom was a house with a yard versus a mother in uniform. The judge ruled in favor of maintaining what he called the status quo. Noah would stay in the Blackwood house with Greg from Monday through Friday, while I was granted weekend visitation and daily video calls. That decision handed my daughter's Tuesdays to the very man who had staged a public ambush in her living room. I walked out to the parking garage, sat in my truck, looked at the empty car seat in the rearview mirror, and allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to break down. Then I wiped my face and turned the key. In the days that followed, Greg's family cut off all contact. Greg's sister sent me a text. "Victoria, please just sign the papers. Stop dragging our family through this." Cousins blocked me online. The pastor's wife, who had hugged me at Noah's baptism, walked right past me at the grocery store, staring straight through me as if I didn't exist. A rumor spread through the military spouses network that I had cheated on my husband. The lie traveled faster than I could ever drive. I caught myself typing out a long message to the Marshall family group chat, complete with transaction dates, bank alerts, and logical explanations. But I stopped myself and deleted the entire text. "Explaining yourself to the people who helped build the stage for your execution? is just begging for applause from the wrong audience. While they celebrated their temporary win, I focused on logistics. The subpoenaed financial records arrived at Grace's office in a large cardboard box. I spent the entire weekend organizing those documents into a thick binder with color-coded tabs. Red tabs, 12 transfers from November to March, moving $53,600 from joint savings directly to Greg's business account. Blue tabs, childcare attendance logs. My signature appeared in the sign-in and sign-out boxes every morning and every evening for an entire year. Green tabs, a document that made my lawyer raise her eyebrows. In February, someone had submitted an online application for a $60,000 home equity line of credit against our house, featuring a forged electronic signature in my name. The application had been submitted from an IP address belonging to Greg's real estate office. It had failed only because the bank's fraud prevention team called my cell phone to verify the request, and I had immediately flagged it as unauthorized. Grace looked at the green tab for a long moment. He was so desperate for cash that he forged your signature back in February. Remember that whenever you start thinking any of this was about love, jealousy, or doubt, this was a man drowning, looking for anything floating to stand on. In early May, the court granted our motion for an official, court-ordered genetic test. Greg's attorney fought it fiercely, claiming that a second test was an unnecessary insult to a grieving father. Grace shut him down with a single sentence. If your client trusts his results, Your Honor, a certified state laboratory will only confirm them. The judge signed the order. Testing was set for May 9th at 9 a.m. On the appointed day, we arrived at the certified medical facility. The technician verified my government ID, checked Noah's birth certificate, took our photos, and put on sterile gloves. Greg arrived 11 minutes late, wearing sunglasses on top of his head, and trying to charm the room out of habit. The technician didn't even look up. "Photo ID, please," she said. She swabbed Noah's cheek, then mine, then Greg's. Each swab was placed into an individual container, sealed with tamper-evident tape, labeled and signed by everyone present. As Greg walked past my chair on his way out, he leaned down close to my ear and whispered under his breath, "It doesn't matter what those probers show, Victoria. Everyone already believes me." 3 days later, the Navy deployed my unit to the field for a 9-day tactical exercise. Rain, mud, and managing supply lines for 400 troops in the woods. Exactly the kind of schedule Greg's lawyer had described with such dramatic pity in court. Noah remained in Blackwood under the temporary order. When our convoy finally rolled back through the base gates on day 9, 2 official envelopes were waiting on my desk. I opened the first envelope standing up, still wearing my muddy uniform. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Greg Marshall was Noah's biological father. I sat down right there on the floor and let myself cry for about 2 minutes. Then I washed my face, because I knew the difference between a battle and the war. Predictably, when Greg received the certified results, he immediately shifted his story. He called another family meeting at his mother's house, broke down in tears, and unveiled a new script. He claimed he was a victim too, asserting that an online testing company had scammed him and handed him a fake report that broke his heart. He put on a dramatic performance, crying tears of relief that Noah was indeed his daughter. His family bought the news story instantly. Poor Greg, taken advantage of by the internet, but he never stopped loving his little girl. Nobody called me. Nobody apologized. But the second envelope sitting on my desk contained a 41-page forensic report from Howard Feld, an expert document examiner to whom we had sent the digital original of Greg's initial DNA PDF. The forensic examiner had dismantled Greg's file down to its digital DNA. First, the original test report was built using a downloadable template from a website that sells novelty certificates. Printed at the very bottom of their site in tiny gray text were the words, "For novelty and entertainment purposes only." Second, the file metadata revealed that the author field read G_Marshall. The file had been created and saved on March 30th at 11:38 p.m. Third, the financial trail showed that the $39 template purchase had been made on March 30th using a debit card linked to Greg's business account. The receipt had been sent directly to Greg's personal email address. Fourth, the automated phone line for the fake lab had been rented through a virtual phone service on March 28th, paid for with that exact same business debit card. Fifth, The anonymous email sent to my military commander had been routed from an IP address matching the network at Greg's real estate office. This wasn't a tragic mistake by a confused husband. It was a meticulously planned operation. He had personally fabricated the fake document on March 30th, purchased a fake swab box as a prop, and scheduled the public execution in our living room for April 19th. Grace Kettler read through all 41 pages, took off her reading glasses, and looked at me. "We are ready for the final hearing. Now it is up to you. We can settle this quietly, or we can show this entire town what real evidence looks like." On the day of the final court trial, Greg arrived alongside his mother and his lawyer, looking confident and expecting a routine settlement. Instead, Grace Kettler presented our complete evidentiary package directly to the judge, including the full digital forensic audit, the bank statements proving grand larceny, and the expert testimony. The courtroom transformed in a matter of minutes. Greg's lawyer attempted to object, but the paper trail was absolute and undeniable. The judge's final ruling was devastating. First, sole physical and legal custody of Noah was awarded to me immediately. Greg was granted only limited, supervised visitation. Second, full ownership of the house in Blackwood was awarded to me, as the down payment and all mortgage payments had come from my personal funds, while Greg's secret withdrawals and attempt to forge a mortgage line were ruled as severe financial fraud. Third, the court ordered Greg to pay me back the $53,600 he had stolen from our joint account. Furthermore, the judge directly referred the forensic evidence and the forgery reports to the county prosecutor's office for criminal prosecution regarding fraud, identity theft, and filing false statements. At the exact same time, the certified paternity results and the full court findings were handed over to my military command. The administrative flag was immediately lifted from my official file, and my promotion packet for major was approved and forwarded to the board. As we walked down the courthouse steps, Eleanor and Greg's relatives stood near the entrance in total, stunned silence. Nobody yelled. Nobody pointed fingers. They simply watched in silence as I buckled Noah securely into her car seat in the back of my truck. My father was right. People can make up any story they want, gather a crowd, and shout as loudly as they can. But paper doesn't blink, and when the time comes to lay out the facts, the only voice that matters is the one holding the complete paper trail.